Realm presents The Vela Salvation, Episode 3.
Asala Siku hung out on the flight deck often. It was the only place she felt comfortable after everything that had happened. Beyond the loading docks, that was where things fell apart. It had been 3 months since the wormhole closed, since the evac. That's what they had started calling it, an evacuation, leaving their original solar system centered around a dying sun. It was a sad fact that they'd been dealing with for the past century. The slow death of their star leached away all the warmth, planet by planet, until it was impossible for whole populations to survive. It had literally become a death trap. They had to escape it one way or another. So when that wormhole opened, it was a godsend. She had no other choice but to take her sister Dio and brave their way into the unknown. Wherever it was had to be better than where they were coming from. At least, that was what she had thought. Apparently, there were a lot of people who didn't agree with her. Some people actually wanted to stay right where they were in that cold coffin of a star system. She didn't quite get it. She was a seasoned soldier, but she knew when to bow out from a fight. If someone was definitely going to shoot her and had a really good chance of making that shot fatal, then Asala stepped away. She knew when the fight was lost. Still, being alive was better than keeping her pride. And that was exactly how she felt here, on the other side. At least she was still alive. Unlike her boss, Ekram. The poor sod was dead because of her. Shooting him was a mercy. A cracked helmet in the vacuum of space meant stretched hours of slow death. Still, sometimes, when she closed her eyes, she saw the look on his face before his craft exploded. He wasn't angry or full of despair. He had just accepted it. That alone pissed her off, because she had seen a lot of death in her time, but it was still hard to watch a friend go, much less accept it. It wasn't often that a mercenary would give a damn about their employer. They were living cash grabs. Yet Ekram was the only person who had really respected her. Now who did she have left? Nico? No, not anymore. Not after she left them, without taking even a second to search for their signal in the chaotic battlefield they left behind at Camp Gala. During the frenzy, there was no time to multitask. There was only time to prioritize. In the very little time she had, she could only save one of them to bring through that quickly closing wormhole. And Asala had chosen Dio. The two of them were a broken pair, two halves of a cracked piece of pottery. Did you glue them back together, or did you throw them away? For Asala, it would never be the latter. Dio was all Asala had left, Asala's only hope. Respect was what determined your worth in this whole playing field of an existence. So she looked to Dio, hoped that one day she would get it from her. It'd be a challenge, but Asala knew the satisfaction of hard work. And there was work yet ahead. When a large shipment of supplies had to be delivered to their new settlement below, Asala jumped at the opportunity to pilot it down from their base in orbit. But that wasn't all she was going down there for. Asala grabbed her utility bag and slung it over her shoulders. She looked out the observational windows at the twin suns burning vibrantly outside. They were in a new galaxy now, and they were living, breathing, and far from freezing to death. It was a fresh start. Their destiny brought them here to a healthy star system. It'd be several million years until these twin stars would extinguish. So much time. She was planning on making use of it. Asala made her way to the landing pods, where a few star jets were parked for maintenance. They were lucky that a carrier made it over during the evac. It was a giant metal whale of a thing, complete with laboratories, mess halls, training rooms, residence wings, and metabase. Not to mention, lots of firepower. The state-of-the-art carrier was from the Gandesian fleet, but she considered an enemy ship for a good part of her existence. But hey, beggars couldn't be choosers. She thought about how the Gandesian leader, General Sinrig, had one fewer carrier, and laughed. A small win, in a way. A group of deck techs passed her by, trying to steer clear. She made her way to her cruiser. It was a little dinged up from the evac, but put a tank of fuel in it and it would stay aloft. As for the burn marks scorched into the top layer of metal panels, well, Asala had never cared for appearances. Because of that, her vehicle stood out among the other small jets being housed in here. Gandesian soldiers were extremely superficial. Even galaxies away from Sinrig's command, their jets were tip-top, polished, shined. Asala walked over to one of the deck techs servicing her cruiser. His movements were crisp and structured, just like his uniform and regulation haircut. "I'm scheduled for departure in half an hour," she said. "Only have a narrow opening before the storm hits ground camp." The deck tech stared at her blankly. A blink, and then a second later, another blink. "Over here!" someone called after her. Asala looked over at another tech standing over by her cargo. He wore the typical sharp black Gandesian uniform, paired with an angular safety helmet strapped around his head. A screen with her inventory list was in his hand. "That one's a heavy," he said as he scrolled through his data displays, his eyes barely looking up to glance at her. She had no idea what he meant, so she stared at him exactly like the first tech had stared at her. "A heavy?" "A work, cyborg. They're only programmed to move things, not for chit-chat." "Not much different from the lot of you." Her voice was sharp. It was enough for the tech to notice, finally tearing his eyes away from his screen. His gaze lingered on the Hypatian clan tattoo circling her eye, and she knew he had already made up his mind about her.